This week is absolutely jam-packed in terms of the economic calendar. There's unemployment numbers coming out, but more importantly, on Wednesday, we're going to get some data around inflation. Now, if you have been following the news and you've been following what's happening with inflation, over the past 2 months, we've seen inflation be stagnant at 6.7%. Now, whilst this was banded about to being good, and it was because obviously inflation didn't increase, that would have really put the cats among the pigeons. But we're still way behind where we should be. Our target, don't forget, for inflation is 2%. We're at 6.7. So Wednesday is a really big day, and we're going to be paying real attention, tentative attention to whether or not we see inflation remain stagnant, whether it increases, or hopefully, this is what we're looking for, is a reduction in inflation, bringing us closer to that 2% mark. That's what I want to talk about in this episode of the podcast. What's the consensus? What are the forecasts? What should we expect? What's going to happen with the Bank of England base rate, mortgage rate, savings rates as a result of this? This is a pretty big one. Now, if you've been paying attention to Andrew Bailey, the boss of the Bank of England, and some of the language that has been coming out, you'll notice that he's been very, very careful in not giving people the false hope that we're in the environment where interest rates are going to be coming down. In fact, the language around inflation is that we are still facing a significant challenge when it comes to inflation. The real fear is that inflation might be entrenched in the economy, and therefore that's a little harder to move with interest rates, with the Bank of England interest rate. Now, interestingly, the last vote, they decided to keep the Bank of England base rate at 5.25%. Many will argue that there was an opportunity for them to push it to 5.5% to try and drive inflation down a little bit quicker, but they decided to hold their guns. And that kind of mirrors what's happened with inflation. Inflation is currently at 6.7%. It's been stagnant for the past 2 months. And the last two rate decisions kind of reflected the fact that inflation is stagnant, albeit still too high. So what happens on Wednesday is going to be really, really important. Whether we're going to see an increase, and that would be really, really bad. Whether we see inflation be stagnant, if it's stagnant, that's not necessarily positive either, because it suggests that inflation is entrenched, and that becomes a challenge for the Bank of England, because now you just can't use monetary policy, interest rates, to get that down. Are we going to see a reduction? That's what we're hoping for. Now, if I use trading economics to track a lot of the forecasts and a lot of the data that is coming in, because that's a reliable source, and you're getting numbers from the Office of Budget Responsibility, the ONS, you're getting information from the Bank of England as well that comes into this. If you go and have a look at trading economics right now, as of me recording this video, the current rate of inflation is 6.7%. However, the consensus for Wednesday is that we will see inflation fall by 4.8%. The official forecast is 4.9%. Now, that would be utopia. That would be really, really good news. However, I'm a little skeptical, because a drop to 4.8 or a drop to 4.9 is a pretty significant drop. And I would love to be able to scrutinize the data to see what is going into the measurement of this in CPI reading to bring it down to these levels. We know that oil prices have gone up recently, and that we haven't yet seen come through in the data. Whether that's going to make a significant difference or not, we don't know. But I'm hoping that these numbers are right, because if these numbers are right, this will mean that at least we're moving in a positive direction. And what that means from a monetary point of view for the Bank of England, for mortgage rates, and many of us who are mortgage holders will know that, that is coming down the track now. I've been on the record to say that my mortgage has gone from 1.49 to 4.75. The first payment for that went out on the 1st of November. So the reality of what I knew was going to happen is now actually come true. And that means an extra £210 a month for me on my mortgage. And many of us will be feeling exactly the same way. But the positive thing will be if we do see this interest rate forecast come true, where it drops to 4.9, or maybe correctly with the consensus at 4.8, it means that monetary policy potentially has the ability to be eased. But that might be a little premature. This is Andrew Bailey speaking to Sky News about 11 days ago around interest rates specifically.
Monetary policy remains restrictive. Let me be clear, there is absolutely no room for complacency. Inflation is still too high. We will keep interest rates high enough for long enough to make sure we get inflation all the way back to the 2% target. We will be watching closely to see if further increases in interest rates are needed. But even if they are not needed, it is much too early to be thinking about rate cuts.
Now, what he's saying here is inflation is still a pretty high risk, and there is no discussion at this point in time that we're going to see rate reductions anytime soon. And I think that this is a really important point to consider. And oftentimes when these things are said in the public domain and they're said on the news, people will say that, maybe they're scaremongering. I like to think that you can read between the lines of what they're trying to say here. He is clearly signposting that we are in for higher interest rates for much, much longer. And what does that look like? If you look at trading economics right now, the forecast is that we are going to see the base rate sit at 5.25% until at least Q3 of 2024. And if that is the case, what that basically means for mortgages is that, well, good news, first and foremost, if you're on a tracker, there will be no interest rate rises if you're on a tracker. You're going to see your payments remain stagnant pretty much. If you're on a fixed rate, there will be no nasty surprises because obviously your fix is meaning that you're guaranteeing the rate that you're paying. However, for new fixed rates that might be available for first-time buyers or people who may be looking to remortgage right now, we should see that the fixed rate market remains stagnant, doesn't see any increases, but potentially might see some decreases in the rates because mortgage lenders might decide to create some competition amongst themselves, suppress rates to bring in more business and to write more mortgages. And there is a dire need for that at the moment. There is a significant slowdown in house purchases right now, and these properties are taking much, much, much longer to ship. So there might be some good, positive, competitive movement within the mortgage lenders specifically. When it comes to savings rates, well, has the bank ever given away money for free without there being a good reason for them doing so? Probably not. The point is, look, in order for savings rates to increase, they would need the Bank of England to increase the base rate in order for savings rates to increase. Again, unless they have some way of maybe trying to garner a little bit more competition to bring in more funds, there is likely that interest rates for savings will remain the same. Now, generally speaking, this will be good news if inflation falls to 4.8, 4.9%. But for a moment, I just want to entertain the opposite of this happening. And the opposite will be if we see inflation increase by sheer surprise on Wednesday. What will the Bank of England do? That I can't tell you. I don't know. That is the honest answer. What I do think will be important to know is that it will mean that all of the decisions that the Monetary Policy Committee may have been considering will be under jeopardy. I'm not an economist, but I will struggle to see how they keep the bank rate the same, stagnant at 5.25%, and they don't push interest rates up if we see inflation increase on Wednesday. And that right there is a scary thought, because then we're back into the discussion of, right, where do mortgage rates go? Do mortgage rates hit, the 6+% mark, which will be a real concern for the property market. It will be a real concern for people who have mortgages right now, who are already struggling to contend with interest rates increasing as they currently are. It would be a really sticky wicket, and one that I don't wish to happen. So at the moment, it is fingers crossed for Wednesday. Let's hope that we get a fall in inflation, and that will mean that monetary policy shouldn't change for the foreseeable unless something really, really surprising comes out of the woodwork. What else is happening? Well, on the 22nd of November, which is my birthday, by the way, we're going to be having the autumn statement, and Jeremy Hunt is going to be delivering that budget, and there's a lot that has been posited that will be delivered. There's something around ISIS as well, which would be very, very interesting indeed. I'm trying to find a little bit more information about that on the net before I speak a little bit more about that. But on the 22nd, I will probably do a live stream on YouTube where I will talk about that specifically, and I'll provide a breakdown in the newsletter. So if you're not part of the newsletter, I don't email out every single week. I only email those of you who have subscribed when it's important, when something significant is happening. So I'll probably do a breakdown of that alternate statement on the newsletter. So if you haven't subscribed, head over to peterkomalafe.com and subscribe on the homepage. Literally just give us your email address and you'll get informative tidbits, breakdowns, as I normally do, as and when it's important. But there we are. That's what's happening this week on Wednesday. I hope that you found this useful. Please do let me know what you think. If you're watching on YouTube, let me know what you think is going to happen in the comment section. Do you think we're going to see inflation fall? Do you think it will be stagnant? Do you think it will increase? If inflation increases, what do you think the Bank of England is going to do? If you're listening on Spotify, any of the audio podcasts, then please, by all means, either give us a thumbs up, because that's really, really important in terms of our ranking, but also message me on IG if you have any thoughts that you want to share as well. But I appreciate you. Hope you enjoy your week. I'm in Monaco. I'm doing a little bit of work, but also a little bit of R&R. I will see you next Monday.